Welcome to the Roundtable, where we're going to talk to several guests about their actual play on our premier podcast network featuring Forged in the Dark games and their designers. My name's Mark Cleveland. I'm here with the cast of our recent actual play show to try something little new. It's like a metagaming talk show, if you will. We're going to do a little bit of talk about the game outside of it, so to speak. We have some hot news as well, if you'll stay tuned to the end, about an upcoming event that I know you'll all be excited for. But first, let's introduce everyone. Starting with the designers, let's tell the audience how to address you and why we should care.
My name's Eric, he, him. I don't know why you should care who I am, but I was one of the designers of External Containment Bureau. It was a great group that we all met on the Blades of the Dark Discord, and I don't remember who it was, but somebody was interested in doing a collaborative project, and we're the ones that raised our hands the fastest, I guess. And
had things available to show, which was important.
Right. Yeah, and right now I'm actually working on an anthology of missions and guidelines for adding a conspiracy to games of ECB that'll stretch across different missions.
Right, when you say ECB, you mean External Containment Bureau, which is one of your new hotnesses that you just dropped, your new games designs. You got that kickstarted and mailed out and everything, right?
Yes, we kickstarted that as part of Zine Quest 3 this spring. We actually started developing it last fall, and I know at least one person here has a hard copy of the book. So all the books have been shipped. If you're in Canada, you already should have yours. If you're in the US, if you don't have it already, you should be getting it relatively soon.
That segues nicely to our next guest.
Hello, my name is Adam Bucheri. I am the creator of Enter the Survival Horror, another Forged in the Dark game. I am a frequenter on the Blades in the Dark Discord, where much of this development has gone through, and I am the proud owner of a physical copy of External Containment Bureau.
Ooh, nice.
And my name is Eric Saltwell. I'm he, him, and I am currently working on a investigative thriller based on Forged in the Dark and Gumshoe. It's called Marked by the Dark, in which investigators are marked by a mysterious Lovecraftian power. And you can find me, if folks, I designed with a group of folks, and together our design studio is called Cryptic Cabal.
Thank you very much for that.
Yep.
And I guess to round it out, I am Zelkri, Zal for short, he, him. I am a moderator of the Blades in Dark Discord. A little infrequent as it is, but I still do it. I played Agent West. I'm a streamer. You can find me on twitch.tv/Zelkri. In terms of any Forged in the Dark stuff, I am kind of, in my Wednesday game, I'm basically playtesting a new, what will hopefully become an advanced playbook for just regular Blades. And once I feel comfortable with it, I'll throw it up for others to evaluate and potentially find place in their own games.
Ooh, all that sounds very exciting. We'll have links to all of those things in the show notes. So let's go ahead and have each of you introduce your role on the stream, your character, and what, if you GM'd or whatever. Start with you, Adam.
Sure, thank you. I was Agent Darby in the first session, a ex-CIA agent now trapped in the body of a 14-year-old boy. For the second session, I was the GM as we switched some roles around.
Yeah, that was quite interesting. You playing a youth character.
I played Agent Happy, and Agent Happy was a man, he's a preacher from down south, and he used his knowledge of religion and folklore as a member of the research department in the External Containment Bureau, and also was a self-designated protector of Agent Darby's innocence.
Oh, I heard an inkling of that voice there.
Yeah, he was a good old boy from the south, that's for sure.
There it is.
Let the record show that Agent Darby had shockingly little innocence to protect.
Yes,
I thought it was going to be out of character.
I really appreciated that interaction between the two characters. So.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess I followed up at the end with Agent West that I was playing. You know, he was supposed to be like an Italian guy who didn't have a whole lot of, proper empathy or tact for things. He just wanted to kind of get the job done and didn't care if, some heads got knocked around in the process or anything. It was weird shit's going on and things need to be solved.
I also felt like he was voted most likely to move the plot forward.
He was an ex-mafia enforcer, if I remember correctly, as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of graded. That was interesting. Your approach was very different from everyone else's.
Yeah, I was hoping to bring out that Men in Black feel we talked about in session 0, and then it didn't quite fully happen. But I was like, some of us had the idea of it, and when I was kind of going towards it, and then some of us kind of were restrained on it, and then it kind of ended up being a little jumbled, and we kind of toppled over each other a little bit. But it was still fun. It was great entertainment. Yeah,
and I think that brings us to you, Eric. You were GMing. Oh wait, let's talk about my character. Oh gosh. Yeah. Oh, so Agent Conti was my character. They're a French foreign legionnaire, and they had a bit of a military kind of background through that, and some, I don't know, maybe some traumas or something. It was kind of cool to bring that out and discover who they were, since I didn't know who they were going to be really until I was halfway through the session.
Yeah, so my name's Eric, and I was the GM for the first session. And then unfortunately, I had I guess kind of an unexpected family medical emergency where I had to step away for a few weeks. So Adam thankfully jumped in so that the rest of you could finish off the mission. One of the things that I learned about ECB from that, External Containment Bureau from that, is that it can be effectively played with rotating GMs, which was good. I think one of the interactions that I really liked was kind of two-piece. Was at one point Conte and Agent West went into a room, and Agent West had this long rambling discussion about telling the person not to move, and in the middle of it Conte said, "Freeze." And that was it. A while later, they were in a different part, and West said to Conte that he'd just keep quiet so that Conte could do his thing without being distracted. And Conte responded that he rather liked it when West went on his long rambling statements, he found it quite entertaining, even though he didn't want to admit it. So I thought that was a great character interaction.
There was a lot of fun moments like that where we were trading blows, so to speak, like agents might, kind of around a workplace. That was kind of fun to bring that out. We're going to get back to talking about this GM switch thing, because that was actually quite an interesting moment during the stream that I think is worth highlighting again. We did actually mention a little bit about touchstones. What other touchstones can we bring up besides like X-Files, right? What should people be thinking of when they think of the ECB?
That really depends on how serious you want to play. You can take the game from a pretty dark horror to a kind of a light Men in Black type game pretty easily, so.
Yeah, we had a discussion before we played about how dark we wanted to play it, which first of all, I just wanted to say I thought was kind of great session 0 kind of content, but also I was surprised that the game was pretty flexible in terms of accommodating both light and moments of comedy, but also being able to be pretty dark when you wanted it to.
That's always a tough line to ride. Like if you think about the emergence of horror comedies lately and how most of them don't do well, right? Because of the tone is tough to balance, But yeah, there was that. It was like behind the scenes, we were like lighthearted with one another, is the way I felt. And then when things happened in front of other NPCs, we'd like turn on the bureaucratic side and things like that. And that was really interesting. Mm-hmm. Very tangible tone shift was happening, I feel like. It wasn't like I felt lost.
In the session 0, one of the things we talked about with tone was that we didn't want the plot, I guess, to be like slapstick, goofy horror type. So it was kind of a serious plot, but as characters, we didn't want to shy away from the more witty banter between characters. And you can lighten things up by the character interaction, even though the plot definitely could get dark and at times got dark. So
one of my philosophies as a game master is that the game master gets to present the situation and say, this is a serious situation. There's something scary happening. There's a chase. But it's the players who get to decide whether the chase music is suspenseful or if it's yakety sax. Players get to control a lot of the tone, which I always appreciate because I feel like as a group we were able to strike a pretty good balance.
Yeah, and I definitely felt like the discussion we had early on was able to generate buy-in in a way that I feel like I thought about while we were playing. And so I feel like it impacted my play.
I would also like to give a special shout out to the safety tools that were included as part of us leading into the game. On the quick start, there was a list not only of the lines and veils, which I've seen before, but also of the palette, which allowed us to kind of help steer the direction of the story and what felt good. And I was a really big fan of just how good those tools felt.
Yeah, also I'd like to call it, I just thought that the quick starter, that like, hey, for especially for online play, having the shared conspiracy board, the kind of Pepe Silva board, and having being able to see each other's characters in real time, I thought all of that was actually really helpful. And, certainly inspired me. And I think, Adam, you were saying as well that you really enjoyed the quick starter.
I developed a quick start for Enter the Survival Horror, and huge parts of it are lifted wholesale from the ECB one. Yeah, it's a wonderful quick start, a fabulous tool, and these kind of tools have changed the way that I play online games.
Hey, can you talk for a minute about when you were designing this scenario at the beginning? I think one of the really interesting things about ECB is that it's investigative, and most investigative games are really railroady, right? Like you have a solution in mind and the characters uncover clues, and then you find out the big reveal that the GM knows ahead of time. But here you have to set up a scenario where the characters actually play a role in defining what's going on behind the scenes, but you have to kind of lead them to something because you need to give them enough clues to investigate. How do you think about going about doing that, and how would you give GMs who are kind of playing the game advice about how to do that?
I think one of the places where I struggled a little bit with GMing was that I learned that it's kind of hard to run your own mission that you wrote if you just have an idea in your head and you really didn't write down enough, a few notes. You don't have to spend a ton of time prepping, but I had in my head kind of where I thought things were going to go and had to keep kind of checking myself and saying, no, that's not my decision. So one of the ways that we built that into the game is, first of all, from a prep standpoint, is to keep it minimal, right? So you have an idea of, what the hook is, of what's drawing them in. You have some, a handful of NPCs that you don't have to stat out. You've got a name and a couple tags for them, and then you've got some clues and maybe some ideas for complications that there might be. And that's all you go in with, right? So a page of notes or less. And really building off the players and listening to what the players are saying as far as how they're starting to put clues together as they come out is key to helping to move things along. And then the theorized role really is about what brings that together as far as the emergent mystery, more so than you see in other games that have that predetermined end. And I'm really curious, Adam, how you approached it since you picked up in the middle. I mean, you had no idea really what was in my head as far as where we were at the midpoint. So, and then you kind of came in from scratch, knowing what the clues were that had already been found.
Yeah, so this is an interesting point of contrast with Enter the Survival Horror, which it does share a lot of similarities in that usually at the center of that game, there is a mystery. But it's more rigidly defined, it's more like a classical dungeon where it's not as freeform, there's not the theorize role. And so I reached out to you and I was just like, hey, what notes do you have? Did you prep of any materials? And you were just like, well, I kind of had an idea of this direction, but then it changed. And then it's just like, oh, well, and from what you were talking about, you were living up to the ideals of this being like a free form, free flow mystery where you were discovering it at the same time. And so I tried to follow that as well. I also did minimal prep. It felt like there was a pretty clearly defined villain. There were a few important notes that I was like, okay, I feel like these connections are strong enough to be more or less canon, but large parts of it I left open to interpretation. And when you made the theorize role, that definitely crystallized some of the details that I hadn't anticipated as you brought in elements that I wasn't necessarily expecting.
So I loved filling out the theorize role, but I think before we talk about it some more, maybe, Eric, you want to describe what the theorize role is?
Sure, and I want to ask a question about that quick. So the cryptid that came up in the theorize role, I might have missed it, but were there clues? I mean, what clues got you to that?
So there was a role that my character had made in order to check lore, I think, and had succeeded. And, I had kind of said at that point, I knew about the Dream Eater, right? That's really where the Dream Eater came from. And so that was really the clue, and then combine that with he's taking LSD, which means he's not sleeping. He's got dream catchers everywhere. Yeah, I actually felt like, wow, there were so many clues to integrate in that related to it. It felt super smooth and natural.
That's funny because when you are all talking about your theory and the Dream Eater came up, I did like a double take. I'm like, well, where the heck did that come from? Because it was never anywhere in my head that there was a cryptid involved, because I think at one point, even in the session 0, somebody said like no Bigfoot. At least it wasn't, you can't do monsters in general, but it was no Bigfoots.
It was definitely on our Pepe Silva board, so it was definitely on our conspiracy board.
Yeah, I think it was mentioned like almost as a throwaway detail about like a local urban legend.
Yep.
I remember it. It was like a crit that you got.
Yeah.
To try to figure out lore.
Yeah.
And you were like, is it this kind of lore? And it was like, I guess so. And then it went on the board.
Yeah, so the way the theorize roll works, or the characters are identifying clues, and at some point either the players have an idea of, I think this is what it is, or when the GM is kind of like, it's time to wrap this up. I think you have enough clues to kind of prompt the players. But then the players, through the lens of their characters, put together a theory of what they think is happening. And specifically trying to answer 3 questions, which form the core of the game. So it's 3 principles of the bureau that they work for. So identify, what is this phenomena? And then the second one is contain. So how do we contain it? Contain does not mean kill, right? I mean, it can be. There's all kinds of different ways you can contain something. And then the third one is obscure. So how do you obscure that from the general public? So the players use clues that they've generated to come up with their theory, and then they make a roll based on that. So they add 1 die to their pool for each of the clues that they use. Somebody rolls, and then based on that roll, you determine how close they were to being correct.
And then what's the impact of a success versus a failure there?
It actually is very similar to an engagement roll in Blades in the Dark. If you get a 6, then you're pretty spot on. The resolution is not all that dangerous. If you get a 4 to 5, so it's a success with complications. There's some aspects of your theory that have holes in it, so when you do the scene to resolve, it's a little bit more risky. And then if you have a failed result of 1 to 3, there's some aspects of your theory that work, so the GM can still run off of those, but it's a lot more dangerous than you were expecting.
So does it resolve when you hit the 6? Does that mean that's the answer?
I mean, it's not the end, right? But it basically means that your theory is really solid and you're going to start in the best position possible for the resolution scene.
It took a bit getting used to that because I kept looking for the right answer because the theorized roll hadn't clicked yet. It wasn't until after the roll was made and the theory came up that I was just kind of like, oh. Like, it's not rational. Like, I should have known it. It was there in text. It's based on, Blades. It's a Forged in the Dark game. Like, it's all there. But I kept, like, just waiting for, like, what was the plan? What are we actually, like, coming to put together as, like, the right answer? And then the theorized rule came out, and it was just like, so yeah, well, what's going on here? And then he did the whole thing with, like, the Dream Eater. And then it was just like, oh, right, yeah. Yeah, we have control over this. This is what we say it is. Oh, huh. All right.
Yeah, that was actually, I think, a great moment for all of us. As Eric was revealing how everything connected, it was like we were also kind of like, oh, yeah, because we didn't know what they were going to say. Even if we had ideas, we didn't know what they were going to say. We could have threw in more, but I was actually happy to let them carry on because what they said sounded great. It sounded kind of... I felt like the pressure was lifted off when this discussion came about to figure out what was going on. As long as one of us had good ideas, we could all have piggybacked on that and just went for it, Do you want to talk about another important thing, a top secret thing that might be coming up soon?
As I said at the beginning, one of our goals with the game was to make it approachable for others to be creative and do their own thing with it. So on October 1st on Itch, I'll be hosting the Redacted Materials Jam. So Redacted Materials is the umbrella or whatever that we're referring to games that are based off of ECB or supplements or whatever.
So it's like the SRD for ECB?
There isn't an SRD yet, but the game itself is basically open.
I think it's more like extra materials, right? This is like the adventure paths or something.
Character creation is based on picking a background and a department that you work for. So in the jam, if you're interested, somebody could make a new department. You could put together a new background. If you've got other powers you want to add, you could do that as part of the jam. You can create missions, so it's pretty open, or you can create your own game. I know somebody working on a dungeon crawling hack where they've taken the theorize role and turned it into asking questions and answering questions about the dungeon itself. So they may have an alpha version of that game ready as part of the jam, which would be awesome. From the community as designers, it's however you want to treat it is great, and you can pay what you want. Give it free, you can charge. I think people are putting time in. If they feel like they want to charge, they should be able to, because it is a huge time investment. And so we're trying to be as flexible as we can with how people use it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm looking at the page now, the preview, I suppose. It'll be starting right around that date. Looks like you've got it already set up and ready to go. So when this comes out, it should be out, and people should be able to go ahead and go to itch.io into the jams and find redacted materials.
Yeah, the link will be in the notes for this podcast as well.
That already looks great. So, it already looks great. Like, it's just open-ended right now. That's great. The one thing I want to ask you, since you mentioned powers, there's quite a bevy of powers. Let's have everyone talk about their favorite power real quick. Just list what's your favorite power, Eric? Eric K. first.
Precognition for sure. It's an investigative game. Horror. Come on, precognition.
Similar to that, I was really excited about retrocognition. I thought with Agent Darby being trapped in the body of this young boy, having him be able to see glimpses of the past would have been really thematic and interesting way to bring that supernatural element to his character.
I felt like retrocognition had a very discern realities kind of vibe from PBTA.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah, you got to reveal stuff. Yeah, that was cool. Hey, what about you, Zal?
As a player, I was very tempted for telekinesis.
Classic.
But for Weston specific, for his character, it would obviously have had to been, pyrotechnics or whatever. That was incredibly going to be a West thing.
Yeah, sure.
That tracks.
Me, I went with the teleportation, I think there was a moment where I thought about doing the sacrificial move.
Oh, yeah, the transcendence.
Yeah, I was going to sacrifice, do the transcendence, and I was like, oh, what? But that's so boom, just like a big explosion of I didn't want to take the stage like that. I kind of wanted Conte to be more subdued as a character. And so it worked out cool where I was like, oh, this is my way out. I need to teleport downstairs, or maybe upstairs would be nice, but, it was cool that you put me back downstairs, because then, just put the lid back on the steaming pot, so that it could start to boil over again. Yeah.
Is that another hard one, Eric, for a GM, is transcendence? I could imagine that would also be challenging.
Not really.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick that one. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to pick that one. I was going to pick it actually before Mark even brought it up. So I think one thing that's in ACB that's very different from other Forged in the Dark games, or especially Blades, is instead of stress, we have resonance. And as you gain more resonance, you gain more powers. But if you max out your resonance 4 times, that 4th time, you're out of the game. But you could also choose to do it earlier if you want to. So that's the transcendence power. And I want to read it quick because I love the language. So transcendence, when you select this power, you immediately redact all of time and space to conform to your own will for a few moments. Afterward, you transcend mundane existence or otherwise vanish as if you had selected your 4th power level. This will kill or transform your characters so that they no longer exist or become an NPC within the background of the Bureau. There's more to it, but that's enough. So that is kind of the end game for a character.
Oh, that's probably a good segue to let people imagine how far they can go down that rabbit hole, and remain part of the Bureau. I definitely think it's been a good time talking. We've had a lot that we could have brought out more to talk about, in fact, I feel like. We are about at our limit, though, for the podcast. I do thank you all for joining me today. Your expert insights and comments, very appreciated. Let's go ahead and let the listeners know where they can learn more about your games.
So you can find ECB, and I've got a few other games, playbooks and things I've created, all on adrenalinrpg.itch.io.
You can find my work. I am Adam Bucceri, Bucceri, and you can find my games at adam-bucceri.itch.io. There you can find my 2 RPGs, Enter the Survival Horror, and Harrowing, as well as a couple other weird games. You can also find me at Adam Bucherri at Twitter.
Excellent. All right, other Eric?
I don't have anything up yet. Like I said, working on Marked by the Dark, an investigative thriller. And when that's posted, you'll be able to find it up at Cryptic Cabal. That's all one word, Cryptic Cabal at itch.io. And then you can also follow our game design on Twitter at Cryptic Cabal.
Fancy. All right. Zal?
For the little bits of Blade stuff I have, it'll be in the description below, but it's mostly just on Blades in the Dark Discord. In the change logs will be a link to my crafting table, which is just a straight Google white and black document of playbooks I've created. Not all of them are play tested. I'm working on them as Blades games come up that allow me to do it. But that's the best way to see my handful of little projects.
And your Twitch channel is quite entertaining, so those who are into actual play should go ahead and follow them.
Absolutely, and you can also find me on Twitter at Zalkyria.
So my name is Mark Cleveland. I'm the designer of Runners in the Shadows and a few other cool Blades in the Dark hacks. I'm also doing stream stuff with this and actual plays and productions from time to time. You can find out more information about our podcast network on our Discord channel, which there will be a link to in the show notes. There you can meet us or talk with us and suggest topics, show us your game, all that kind of cool stuff.
Hey, I just want to say thanks to Eric for the game, which was a ton of fun, and also thanks to Adam for stepping in and GMing on short notice. It was a ton of fun, guys. You guys both did great.
So definitely tune in and stay subscribed to this for more special events like this, where we'll be talking to designers and actual players to bring you all the latest news and other interesting info about Forge in the Dark games and their designers. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.